The Federal Open Market Committee, the FOMC, had a meeting that took place this last week. The Fed chair superstar Jerome Powell is put on the stand to report, and despite inflation ticking up recently, Jerome's response, put simply, policy is sufficiently restrictive. I'll share with you more on what all was said and what the heck is it to the real estate market and what we can expect here in San Diego. Logan Mohtashami, renowned expert in mortgage and housing markets, gives his insights on what to expect after the presidential election and what the realistic chances are of a rate drop actually happening. I'll share with you what he had to say, and boy, it's pretty eye-opening. All this covered here in this week's Market Matters. I'm Karl, your San Diego Realtor. Let's jump into it. Real quick, if you're following my channel and you're planning to sell or buy, let's connect to make sure you're on the best track. You can find a link in the description below to set up a Zoom or in-person call with me. And if you appreciate the information that I'm providing in these videos every week, it'd be appreciated if you subscribe to the channel and like this video as well. Now, on to the good stuff. The Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC. The meeting took place on Wednesday. In the description below, I put the link to the FOMC press conference on YouTube if you wanted to watch it yourself. Bottom line, as per Jerome Powell, policy is sufficiently restrictive. As a result, the Fed funds rate was left alone. Essentially what this means is that the Fed's funds rate is high enough, and what Jerome Powell alludes to is that inflation, despite having ticked up recently, is still in the process of coming down. It's only taking longer than expected. What Jay Powell mentions in the conference is that if you look at the last 24 months, policy is obviously working, and inflation has clearly come down. Now, if you look at the last 3 months, it's not as ideal, but Jerome Powell is still confident enough, and that wording is very specific, he's confident enough that the current policy is what it needs to be at to reach our goal. Due to the time it's taking for inflation to get down to 2% while maximizing employment, which are Jerome Powell's two top priorities, Jay Powell expresses that his level of confidence has diminished some. Nevertheless, no hike or cut they believe is necessary at this time. Jay Powell seems to believe that sustaining current policy will get us to that 2% mark in inflation and sees it happening over the next year or so. In the meantime, they're going to chillax on rates and just monitor the economy going forward. Now, some additional good news from the meeting and the conference. Previously, there were some discussions that rates might inch up, especially in the mortgage sector due to the challenge of getting inflation down. Not only did Jay Powell say that they're leaving rates alone, but he also claimed that a rate hike isn't likely to be necessary anytime soon. Jay Powell only has 3 options with rates. He can hike them, he can leave them alone, or he can cut them. He told us upon the next meeting in about 45 days-ish, it's safe to suggest that there isn't going to be a rate hike. This gives us a ton of relief for the next FOMC meeting around this topic. Considering that we only have 2 options left, either cut rates or leave them alone, it's likely that they're just gonna be left alone, even if it's the case that employment continues to inch its way up, which I'll talk with you more about next week. But what about the next election that is quickly approaching? Isn't all the hoopla saying that rates will drop for the election? Jay Powell continues to advocate that they are not a political arm and will not be influenced by politics. Their goal is 2% inflation and to maximize employment, and by God, that is what they're gonna do and stick to it regardless of any upcoming election. This is such an interesting point. You have to wonder how much of an impact a rate cut could have on an election, and if it could be a determining factor for who gets elected next. Now, let me know what you think in the comments below if you think a rate cut would help one party over the other. So what does this mean for real estate? Well, first off, markets responded positively the day after the meeting. As for rates, we're sitting around 7.25. And based on what I'm hearing from lending, the expectation is that they'll probably settle there for a little while. Keep in mind that prior to the last CPI report, rates were around 7%. Once that CPI report hit, the market flipped out, rates elevated up to about 7.5. It's finally nice to see rates inching their way down, but the big question is if they'll make a solid break below 7% this year. And from what I'm getting from the data, I don't think it's likely. Here's the thing. Consumer spending is strong and real estate affordability is not a concern for Jay Powell and the Feds. The Fed couldn't care less about bringing the prices of real estate down, which in turn promotes and strengthens the rental market, leading to this theory of a renter nation. Demand for housing is still high, but affordability is getting farther and farther away as the jobs market isn't progressing at the same rate. As a result, those who can't buy rent for even longer, and prices continue to get farther and farther out of reach. The thing is, San Diego isn't isolated from this. Almost half of San Diego real estate is non-owner occupied, meaning it's rented. As our median house price hits $1,050,000 for a single detached home, that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of buyers wanting to enter the market as first-time buyers and want a detached home at the same time. If these buyers go the attached route, either a condo, apartment, or townhome, they're looking at a median price of $650,000, and that's an easy $6,000 a month with HOAs. It almost makes more sense to rent at nearly half the price, mitigate the maintenance costs, and either stash the difference in other investments or maybe take a few extra vacations. Now, I'm not suggesting to not buy and invest in real estate. Though I am a little biased as your San Diego realtor, real estate is always a good investment if you hold long enough. I was at the bar the other night, Gravity Heights in Mission Valley. It's rocking, by the way. You should definitely check it out. And these gentlemen were talking to me about the real estate market. They asked if now is a bad time to buy. And the easy answer is, if you can afford it confidently and you plan to hold the home for 10 years, now is not a bad time to buy. Now, 5 to 7 years holding would probably be enough, but 10 years is an easy and safe bet. Let's move into the next topic and see when it's realistic to expect to get an actual rate drop. Logan Mohtashami, renowned expert in mortgage and housing markets and lead analyst for HousingWire, gave his expectations on the future of rates. I'm sure you've heard it either in the news or on YouTube about how the feds want to make a soft landing. For clarity, you have a hard landing, a soft landing, and no landing. A hard landing means we enter a recession. Rates stay elevated for too long, the labor market breaks, and recession becomes the case. A soft landing is when the Fed would pivot before the labor market breaks. So they would cut rates before the labor market showed too much damage, and the cut in rates would spur spending and secure the jobs market. Lastly, there's no landing, which means we keep rates elevated and the economy continues to grow. Kind of what we're seeing now to some degree, many would say. Mohtashami states that historically, the feds don't drop rates until the economy gets bad. So it's likely that the timing of a rate cut may be off and a hard landing is inevitable. The question that follows is how fast can we recover if we make a hard landing? Mohtashami suggests that if Trump wins the election, a rate cut will likely follow, but it wouldn't be to the benefit of the real estate market as you would think, though it would benefit it inadvertently. Mohtashami believes that Trump wants to devalue the dollar to grow our export market. At the moment, we're consumption kings because the dollar is so strong. We actually have to import almost everything. Mohtashami said he wouldn't be surprised that if Trump won, Jay Powell would resign shortly after and Trump would bring in Judy Shelton, who believes that the Fed is overhyped and too restrictive. She would come in and start loosening things up and cut rates shortly after, indirectly lowering mortgage rates as well. So this election could have some major influence on the direction our government chooses to take our country. I don't know which is better or if one is better than the other. They could equally be different and similar means to an end. Bottom line, a rate cut will most likely happen in either a hard landing, aka a recession, or sometime after the election if Trump wins. Now that's a wrap for this week's overly dense, I would say, San Diego Market Matters. If you found this information valuable, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for the weekly updates on the San Diego real estate market. Next week, I'll update you on the recent jobs report and get you a full update on the loan market from one of my preferred lenders. If you're looking to get an idea of what homes are going for, you can click on my property tour, which should pop up around somewhere around here. And if you're considering on buying or selling property in San Diego, don't hesitate to reach out to me for expert guidance tailored to your needs. As always, I'm Karl, your San Diego Realtor. I'll see you in the next video.